What do procurement pros need to know about leases to make it easy for them to ask the right questions?
Well, a lot of times I think it's important to understand the accounting requirements for what information they need so they can finish their calculations. So a lot of times, and I continue to see this a lot when we see lease agreements for new clients, we're making assumptions. There isn't an end date. There's payment terms. There's a lot of the information that
No end date on a lease, Greg? Oi,
What's that?
no end date on a lease?
Well, they've got start date and number of payments, but it's that end date. And
This
depending
day or
if,
that day?
yeah,
The morning,
and
the
that
afternoon?
affects the calculation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Those details, getting more precise, right? Getting not just a start date, but what is it, midnight? What time zone? When
You
does it
don't
end?
need to get that level of detail, but it's more detail than supply chain may have never asked before.
Thank you so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. Today, we are joined by Greg Kautz, and he is a longtime accountant and a jack of all trades in the ERP space, and more recently, a fintech founder with Black Owl Systems. So, Greg, really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. I'm pleased to be here.
So for somebody in accounting, I recognize that getting on a podcast can usually be a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to give a special shout out for that. I also wanted to dig into why procurement and SAP folks and folks through that intake to pay, procure to pay space actually need to care about leases and what makes them special.
Really good question, Sean. On a high level, 2019, the industry changed the way you report leases on the financial statements. It changed from going from a line on the income statement. Now you have to capitalize it on the balance sheet as an asset, as an expense, depreciate it, have interest as if you purchased it. So what that did is that caused a lot of complexity. So before supply chain purchasing would be focused on executing leases. They would do it, 5-year lease. They would, 6 months before it expired, that's when they would start caring about it. Well, with these changes in the accounting regulations, what it's done is it's forced accounting to be looking over the shoulder of purchasing and supply chain. And so now they're wanting details about terms, conditions, buyout options, if there's been a change, a modification to that lease, because that all affects the financial statements. So it isn't just
Procurement that often feels like they're the one looking over the business's shoulder now has accounting looking over their shoulder about leases.
well, exactly. And now it isn't just once in a while, it's every month they're wanting to know this. So now what you've done is you've joined two parts of the organization that typically may have worked before on one-off situations. Now it's an ongoing monthly activity that you have to have that strong communication between the departments and sharing information and having workflows that never existed before, whether it's manual or automated.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when procurement pros need to get involved in leases, I know they often immediately get to negotiations and terms and rates and interest rates and on-time availability. And if there's a fleet involved, what's the maintenance cycle, things like that. But what do procurement pros need to know about leases to make it easy for them to ask the right questions?
Well, a lot of times I think it's important to understand the accounting requirements for what information they need so they can finish their calculations. So a lot of times, and I continue to see this a lot when we see lease agreements for new clients, we're making assumptions. There isn't an end date. There's payment terms. There's a lot of the information that
No end date on a lease, Greg? Oi,
What's that?
no end date on a lease?
Well, they've got start date and number of payments, but it's that end date. And
This day
depending
or
if,
that day?
yeah,
The morning,
and
the
that
afternoon?
affects the calculation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, those details, getting more precise, right? Getting not just a start date, but what is it, midnight? What time zone? When
You
does it
don't
end?
need to get that level of detail, but it's more detail than supply chain may have never asked before.
Right on. So when we think about why that matters and we think about what procurement pros need to know about it, I can imagine a story would be pretty effective to help folks remember why it matters and help land the plane, help make sure this is something that they can remember and bring home to really level this up. What
Yeah.
sort of a story can you share? There's usually like no name basis, somebody that
Yeah.
had something that went wrong, but what story could you help leave the team with or leave the group with?
Yeah, well, I think I'm just reflecting on one client where supply chain was driving the lease agreements, and there was always this break between they would have to bring it so far and then bring it, then accounting would have to take over. And there was that delay in getting the information, and there was delays in processing changes. And so accounting was always felt they were behind a step.
Mm.
And, so what we did when we brought our solution in is actually supply chain was the one who was initiating the contract. So they actually took over access to the system. They could start it so far, and then it would be saved as a draft, and accounting would finish off with the accounting information. So then accounting was in the complete loop. But before, this was one of the things when they approached us, it wasn't about, we're looking for the best lease accounting solution. Of course they were, but one of the core requirements was they wanted to build that coordination between purchasing and accounting. And they said they saw this as an opportunity to build that, through automation.
So if I remember the story, it needed to be plugged into SAP. And I know for our software, we just install inside SAP and it's literally built right inside the platform. For your tool, I know that there's a little bit of integration, but how do you connect in?
So we consider ourselves as a sub-ledger to SAP. So or any ERP system. And so what we do is we sit outside of SAP. So what we need is master data from SAP. So we need the GL accounts that you're going to be using to post the journal entries into SAP. So we bring that in. We can manually upload it. We can build some automation. We need vendors out of SAP because vendors are people who lease. And so we get the master data, and then our output is journal entries. So they're posted every month, all of the journal entries. And so our integration is sending those journal entries. But what's more important is it has to be in the format that SAP can consume. So we have a mapping tool that will then take what our standard journal entry and then SAPIs it.
Yep. It has to speak Japanese.
It's Japanese, yes.
Right on. So as a co-founder of Black Owl Systems, you guys are purpose built to tackle this pain point that is slowing down a lot of teams between procurement and accounting to go and make sure that leases are handled up front and that they're so easy that the friction is removed by capturing the right information up front. What's the best way for somebody to reach out to you if they are particularly frustrated with leases and procurement and accounting?
Probably the easiest way is just go onto our website, blackowlsystems.com, and there's various links, reach out to sales. There's a lot of connectors on the call to actions on the website, but also they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Easy to happy to respond. I won't give up or it's Greg.Kautz at blackowlsystems.com. But, those seem to be the easiest way is through the website or connecting to me on LinkedIn and sending me a quick note.
Well, there you go, folks. If you are running into pain with lease accounting and your supply chain, there's somebody who knows exactly where the accounting policies are buried. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Companies running SAP. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you much. Bye.